Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at something really fascinating, a resource that sort of defies easy categorization.
hmm
We're diving into the Soulstar Tools archive. This was put together by IAMOmni777, who also goes by Kandayia Ali.
Right, and it's quite an extensive collection of work.
It really is. Our goal today really is to understand what this is all about. It seems to blend, spiritual science, things like sound, energy, with very practical, almost systematic trauma healing methods.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And we also really need to unpack its core identity and maybe most importantly, its whole philosophy around accessibility, around the spiritual economy. It's quite radical.
It is, and it's definitely not your typical self-help guide. The material itself, it calls itself a healing laboratory for the awakened soul.
A laboratory like that.
Yeah, it suggests experimentation, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
acts like a research hub where these spiritual sciences, sound, energy, embodiment are applied directly to, well, measurable trauma healing techniques.
What strikes me as unique is how it positions itself. It feels like a guide for people who are sort of walking that line, between trauma and transcendence, maybe.
Exactly. It explicitly tries to bridge the scientific and the sacred.
Which is a big task.
A huge task.
Yeah.
And it offers more than just like inspiration. It provides actual language, specific tools, structured approaches for transformation. It treats self-repair almost like a research project you undertake yourself. Open-ended, but systematic.
Okay, so if we're going to engage with this, we need to understand their language, their lexicon first, right? How they talk about the energetic side of pain.
Precisely. The archive really guides you to understand that trauma isn't just psychological scarring. It translates into trapped energy in the system.
Right? Stuck energy.
Yeah, and that energy needs to be systematically addressed, restored, really, to get back to inner balance.
Okay, let's unpack that lexicon then. What are some of the key concepts they use, particularly in their Lightkeeper series, that sort of reframe trauma for someone learning this?
Well, they give a lot of precision to internal experiences that often just get brushed off as vague feelings,
Like what?
like somatic echo. They use that term to describe how past trauma can keep reverberating in the body, lingering physical sensations long after the event.
Okay, like phantom pains or tensions?
Sort of, yeah.
Hmm.
And it requires somatic body-based release work to clear it.
That concept, somatic echo, it does pop up in some modern trauma therapy, doesn't it? But how does this archive maybe take it further?
It connects those physical echoes to deeper energetic frameworks. So talk about auric overload.
Auric overload, what's that?
It describes this kind of energetic saturation, like congestion, that can build up around the body when your system is just constantly overwhelmed,
Hmm.
chronically stressed.
You're right.
And it essentially acts like an energetic barrier, making it harder for healing energy or even positive experiences to get through.
Interesting. And then the one that really jumped out at me from the source material was cellular grief. That sounds intense.
It is intense.
It implies pain isn't just mental or even just in the nervous system, but like baked into our physical cells.
Exactly. That's the implication. It suggests unresolved pain is held right down at the most fundamental physical level, cellular memory.
So how on earth does the archive suggest someone releases something held that deep?
Well, this is where it really challenges maybe more traditional psychological models. It suggests that if the pain is held vibrationally at a cellular level, then the release also needs to be vibrational.
Uh-huh.
So it links body intelligence, what they call frequency awareness, and divine psychology. Yeah. The idea is that release happens through intentional vibrational shifts.
Using what? Sound, movement.
Primarily sound and subtle movement, yeah. To actually shift those ingrained frequency patterns at the cellular level, it's demanding an energetic solution, not just a mental one.
That level of detail, that systematization, that's really helpful for someone trying to navigate this, isn't it? You need structure, not just vague ideas.
Absolutely. And that brings us neatly to the structure of the archive itself.
Right. The whole thing is broken down into 7, they call them pillars of practice. Makes it very accessible, very organized.
Very organized.
But before we list them all out, which of these pillars do you think really embodies that commitment to accessibility, maybe even radical accessibility, that seems central to their philosophy?
Well, that's definitely pillar 2. Movement for everybody.
Why that one specifically?
Because so many wellness or even spiritual practices assume a certain level of physical mobility,
Right.
like yoga, dance.
Sure.
But this archive makes a really profound commitment to accommodating all levels of physical ability.
Yeah.
They basically state that healing can't be exclusive. It has to be for everyone.
I noticed they categorize the movement very deliberately. There's vigorous stuff, dance meditations, more rhythmic things,
Yep.
then simple stretches, seated or standing, breath aligned.
Mhm.
Pretty standard.
Right.
But it's the inclusion of subtle movement that seems, well, quite revolutionary for accessibility.
That is the defining feature, I think. Subtle movement focuses on tiny things. Micro movements, like releasing tension in your hands or face, tiny little stretches you can do lying down. Breath-aligned movements, specifically designed for people who are disabled, chronically ill, or just have very low energy.
That's huge.
It really is. It totally expands the definition of somatic healing. It's not about fitness. It's about facilitating energy flow, even in the smallest ways possible. Pure, accessible energy work.
That approach alone, catering to someone perhaps bedbound, says so much about their underlying philosophy, doesn't it?
It really does. It sets the tone for the whole archive.
Okay, so let's look at the other pillars then, through this lens of organized, accessible self-repair. Where do we start?
Pillar 1 is sound as medicine. This is really foundational to all their energetic work.
Makes sense given the cellular grief concept.
Exactly. It involves guided soundscapes, frequency-based healing. They offer specific tools like the 808 and 999 plus sessions. Now, for listeners who aren't familiar, these numbers often refer to specific sound frequencies, like hertz levels or sometimes master numbers in numerology, used very precisely in energetic theory.
So it's not just background music.
No, it's designed for conscious listening, for specific chakra alignment or energetic clearing. They also have things like frequency profiles to help you understand how different hertz levels might affect different energy centers.
Very structured. Okay, then pillars 3 and 4 seem to move inward, journaling the higher self and meditative prayers. How do these structure what can be a really messy process, emotional processing?
They turn reflection into a kind of workflow, almost. The journaling isn't just write whatever you feel. It's guided by things like connection prompts or reconnection prompts, specifically designed for integrating shadow aspects or working through forgiveness.
Giving you a starting point.
Exactly. And the meditative prayers are framed as situational invocations, not just general prayer, but specific ones for, say, grounding and surrender, perhaps morning or night, or protection and forgiveness. They merge that feeling of devotion with a very specific vibrational intent.
And they maintain accessibility here too.
Yes, critically. They offer voice-guided reflections and prayers for people who might have visual impairments or physical limitations, making writing difficult. Again, removing barriers.
Okay, that takes us to pillars 5 and 6. These seem to deal with the tangible and the darker psychological stuff. Pillar 5 is anointed earth remedies, getting hands-on with nature.
Right. This is where practical physical healing meets intention. They provide really specific details like healing bath recipes.
Not just throw some salts in the tub.
Not at all. It's specific salts, herbs, oils, often paired with particular sound frequencies to listen to while you soak. It makes the healing act very intentional. You're guided to choose materials based on purpose, maybe planetary alignments they associate with certain herbs, or the specific emotional state you're working with.
Making the mundane sacred, in a way.
Precisely. And then pillar 6, the shadow integration portal. This feels like where the really deep, perhaps difficult trauma work is organized.
Confronting the dark night of the soul stuff is inherently chaotic, overwhelming for most people. How does this pillar bring structure to that?
They provide a clear methodology, specific tools, things like dark night diaries, which are lived accounts from others, normalizing the process of spiritual collapse and rebirth, making it feel less isolating. They also have tools like forgiveness maps. But maybe the most insightful one is emotional cartography.
Emotional cartography. Mapping emotions.
Yeah, using visual charts, diagrams almost, to help you navigate, map out, and understand the energy tied up in difficult emotions like anger, grief, guilt, shame. And then crucially, how to release them energetically. It provides visual structure for that internal turbulence.
Giving you a map for the inner landscape.
You could say that.
Okay. And finally, Pillar 7 covers the IAMOmni tools and offerings. This sounds like curated resources, maybe more advanced.
Yes. This section includes specific, often more advanced tools for guided self-repair. And this is where we should mention things like the CPTSD decoder cards.
Okay, let's pause there. CPTSD, for our listeners, is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, usually from prolonged or repeated trauma, not just a single event.
Exactly. It's often more layered, harder to untangle than single-event PTSD.
So what are these decoder cards designed to do?
They function as analytical tools. They're designed to help someone identify, map out, and track those really complex trauma responses, the triggers, the patterns, the coping mechanisms. They offer highly targeted support for understanding that complexity. This pillar contains the most intensive, tailored resources, and some of these, it should be noted, might represent a more significant investment of time or perhaps finances, unlike the foundational free material.
Right, which is actually the perfect pivot point. We've spent a good amount of time detailing what the tools are, how structured they are. Now let's explicitly connect that radical commitment to accessibility. We talked about the subtle movement, the voice prompts to the archive's core philosophy, the whole idea about the spiritual economy.
Yes. This is where, I think, the deep dive really earns its name. Because the philosophy driving this whole resource is, well, it's one of revolutionary generosity.
How so?
The source material explicitly states its aim is to be living proof that spiritual work doesn't have to be commercialized to be powerful.
Wow, that's a direct challenge, isn't it? Right to the heart of the, multi-billion-dollar wellness industry.
It's a frontal challenge, absolutely. They're advocating for systems and tools that anyone can access and use freely.
Based on what belief?
The belief, it seems, that for light and healing to genuinely multiply in the world, the tools for it can't be locked behind paywalls or treated as competitive products. They need to be shared.
And they frame the sharing deliberately, right? It's not just being nice.
No, they're quite careful about that. They frame distributing this wisdom freely as a strategy. Not charity, not trying to get recognition. It's a deliberate strategy to equip people.
A strategy against what?
Against what they seem to perceive as the corruption or distortion that happens when commerce heavily enters the spiritual or healing space.
Okay, so if we look at this through an economic lens, what they're calling for it's like a profound inversion of value, isn't it? What does that mean for how we think about wealth?
That's exactly the term they imply. The traditional commercial model often focuses on finding profit in the soul, extracting monetary value from people's spiritual seeking or pain.
Right. Selling enlightenment or peace?
Pretty much. This archive flips that. It advocates for teaching the soul's profit from peace.
The soul's profit from peace, meaning?
Meaning that the true sustainable wealth isn't money derived from spirituality, but the inner peace and spiritual self-reclamation itself. That is the wealth.
Ah, I see.
So by making the foundational tools free and abundant, they're essentially lowering the cost of entry dramatically for accessing what they define as true wealth.
This philosophical foundation, it's almost like an economic manifesto for the spirit, suggesting our current societal structures have value completely backwards.
Exactly. It really is that radical. And this whole idea is crystallized in a phrase they use, kind of rallying cry. I am arming the saints.
Arming the saints. That's strong language.
It is. But it's framed as a promise to freely equip everyday people, the sense, in this context, with the spiritual tools they need to reclaim their inner authority, their inner peace.
How is the knowledge distributed then? Like secrets passed down?
No, more like, well, they use the analogy of open source software for the spirit.
Open source software, like Linux for the soul.
Sort of. You're given the core code, the foundational tools necessary for self-maintenance, self-repair, freely and openly, for soul survival, as they put it.
Wow, okay. So this deep dive has really shown us an archive that's much more than just a collection of, meditations and sound baths.
Much more.
It's a highly structured 7-pillar methodology for self-repair, deeply rooted in this radically generous philosophy that challenges the whole commercialization of inner peace. It provides actionable, deep knowledge.
It's a remarkable model, really, for self-directed healing. But as always, especially with material dealing with trauma, we absolutely must include the disclaimer provided by the source.
Absolutely essential. Okay, so just to be crystal clear for everyone listening, the content shared by IAMOmni777 Kandayia Ali is intended for educational and trauma healing support purposes only.
Crucially, it is not meant to replace professional medical or psychological diagnosis or treatment.
Right. It's designed to potentially assist your healing process alongside professional guidance, not act as a substitute for it.
And given the focus on deep shadow work and trauma, some of the material could be emotionally triggering. Users are strongly advised to approach it with self-awareness, self-care, and ideally existing support systems in place.
Please take that seriously if you explore this material. It offers a powerful framework, but needs to be handled responsibly.
Definitely. It's for those ready to become, as they might put it, the architect of their own energetic self-repair.
Indeed. Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over. If we take their Thomas seriously, that inner peace is the ultimate wealth, and spiritual wisdom should be distributed freely, like open source code for soul survival,
Hmm.
what systemic barriers, political, social, economic, would actually need to be dismantled in our world to truly prioritize the soul's profit from peace over purely commercial profit? What would that society even look like?
That is a provocative question to end on. A lot to think about there.
Something to carry with you. Thanks for unpacking all this today.
Thank you. It was fascinating.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.